this is a topic or an area that you have focused or you've put your life work into. Why does this mean so much to you?
I think there are a few reasons. One is that there's so much confusion on this topic, and I feel like just in my conversations with people who don't have a scientific background, there's frustration, a lack of agency, and people really just not feeling confident about what can you go and eat on a daily basis without poisoning yourself. And so I'm very motivated to try and help empower people and clear up some of that confusion that they're exposed to online and reducing anxiety around food.
Yeah.
And my initial on-ramp, though, was experiencing for the first time someone close to me losing their health in a very acute manner. I saw my dad. I grew up in Melbourne, and one of the things that we loved doing, my parents were divorced when I was 10 years old, and so I would only really see my dad every second weekend. Pretty common kind of arrangement. And my brother and I would go and spend the weekend with him, and this was just like a really great time to kind of get father-son bonding and get to know each other. And one of the things that we would do is drive out to the Yarra Valley. And there was one weekend where it was just my dad and I, and we were out kind of hopping from winery to winery. I was like 15 years old. And we did that on this Sunday afternoon, and we were driving back to his house, which was in King Lake. And on the way back, he started to get some chest pain. And I could tell he was uncomfortable as he was driving, and he said he had some chest pain and some pain in his shoulder, and he thought it was, probably just something that would go away, and kind of, denied what was happening a little bit. And as you said at the beginning, my dad's a professor of physiology and researches cardiovascular disease.
Wow.
Yeah, at the kind of bench science level, so a lot of mechanistic stuff. And we proceeded to go home, and we were cooking dinner and checked in, and he thought he was okay, and I went off to bed, and a couple hours later I could hear a lot of noise in the kitchen, and I woke up, went out to see if he was okay, and I could see, like, by this stage he could no longer deny what was happening. He was having a full-blown heart attack, and he was kind of on his knees and had the phone in his hands. He was out of breath. And,
oh, my God.
And
sorry, how old are you at the time?
I'm 15.
15.
Yeah, he was 41.
Oh, wow. So very young.
Whoa. So 41, like back then, when you were a kid, you think 41's old.
Yeah.
And now I'm like,
it's definitely
holy
not.
shit. Like, I'm nearly 41.
Yeah.
And he was also like, people sometimes ask me, like, what was your dad's health like at that time? And I would say he was representative of a young Australian dad. So he wasn't, significantly overweight. He would work out a couple times a week. He was playing squash, which was his kind of sport of choice. He was definitely stressed working, like a lot of hours, trying to make ends meet. Had obviously been through a divorce. He didn't smoke. He drank some alcohol. But he was kind of living the typical Australian lifestyle and diet, and had his entire life. And he'd called 000. I took over on the phone and was explaining to them what he was experiencing. And because we were in King Lake and what I was relaying to them, they decided they would send a helicopter. So fortunately, my dad had this like little mud brick house on quite a bit of land, and they were able to land the helicopter in the backyard and came into the house, put him onto a stretcher, hooked him up to all these machines, and before I knew it, he was flying out.
Wow. And you left there?
I was left there.
Oh,
and so my mum and brother were in Eltham, where my mum lived. And I then hopped in the ambulance because they brought an ambulance as well. And I trailed just by car. And so we were obviously like pretty, privileged in that we could act. We lived in Australia. My dad had healthcare and whatnot. So we trailed and then went to the hospital, and then they came out, and fortunately, they said, your dad's had a severe heart attack. We've saved his life. And that was all we were concerned with.
Wow.
And then the next day, they do like a kind of family meeting debrief. Like, what's the prognosis here?
Yeah. Oh, so like, as in like, what caused it?
What caused it, but more so like, what does his health look like from here? And then also some kind of words of advice to my brother and I, given that we would have similar genetics to my dad, we're getting some of his genes, things for us to kind of look out for as we become adults. And the take-home message for my brother and I from that was that we probably have pretty lousy genes, and we're going to need to keep an eye on this. You know, your dad's had a heart attack at 41. That's pretty rare, but fortunately, they were able to save his life. Which a crazy statistic is that 50%, almost 50% of first-time cardiac events are sudden cardiac death.
Really?
Yes.
50%.
Almost 50%. That number's coming down slightly due to better access to healthcare quicker and responding quicker. But that's a huge statistic,
That is shocking.
right?
Terrifying.
You know,
Must make you feel so grateful that your dad wasn't one of them.
hugely. You know, I think about, it makes me feel grateful, and then it makes me feel for all the people where it went the other way. You know, and I've got to have another. Dad's nearly 70 now, I guess. So I've got to have, you know, another 30 years already with him. But the aftermath of that and walking away from that conversation was really that cardiovascular disease has a strong genetic component. It runs in families. You guys are going to need to be screened as you get older. And the conversation kind of ended there. And sometimes I wish the conversation was longer, but, you know, I don't know. I can't remember like how much time we had with the cardiologist, and it's hard to know everything that was discussed. But I did leave with quite a limiting belief that these are just like the cards you've been dealt, and to see someone who you see as like fit, strong, and go through that health experience at such a young age, you know, it's a little bit disempowering. And it wasn't until I was a bit older and in university and had begun looking at science and researching chronic diseases, and this comes back to kind of why I'm doing what I'm doing now, is that I was able to better understand the effect that genetics have on the chronic diseases that most people in our communities are being affected by. So cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, various types of cancer, dementia. These diseases that so much of us experience either firsthand, someone in our family, or definitely friends of friends, there can be a genetic component that kind of predisposes people to one of these diseases over the other, but it's the lifestyle choices we make and the environment that we kind of create that determines to what extent those genes are expressed or not.
Yeah.
And this has kind of been quantified in twin studies where they take twins with the exact same, so identical twins, the exact same genes, and try and decipher like how much do genes determine your fate when it comes to these chronic diseases versus lifestyle. And it's about 20% genetically determined and 80% is lifestyle.
Wow.
Okay.
So there's many levers you can pull.
Right. And then, so that flips the script from being like a young kid who was feeling a little bit disempowered to then all of a sudden feeling a lot more agency and in control. And then the next question is, well, okay, well, what are those choices? And then now you're introduced to the world of social media, and it's like, holy shit, I don't know where to start. Lately, I've been thinking a lot about toxin exposure. And one thing that I've been paying close attention to is PFAS, or these so-called forever chemicals. They're found in things like non-stick cookware, waterproof clothing, food packaging, and even our drinking water. And they don't break down in the body. Research links them to endocrine disruption, metabolic issues, and perhaps even various types of cancer. I have a scientist coming on the podcast soon to unpack all of this, but in the meantime, I've been using Function Health to test my own PFAS exposure. Function is an all-in-one platform offering over 100 advanced lab tests, including tests you'll be familiar with from this show that we've spoken about, like ApoB and LP(a), and now PFAS. That is about 5 times more testing than you would get in a standard physical. Most of us have some level of PFAS in our bodies due to the environment that we live in. The question is, how much? If levels are high, testing gives you the knowledge to make changes, like filtering your water or switching to PFAS-free products.
Function is easy to use with 2,000 plus lab locations across the United States and a membership that's just $499 per year. No supplements, no prescriptions, just real, unbiased health data. Head to functionhealth.com/Simon Hill to get started. That's functionhealth.com/Simon Hill to get started today.